Hi, this is Congressman Tom Cole. This is another one of our weekly congressional chats. Been a kind of active week in Congress this week on the plus front. Frankly, we passed the National Security and Related Programs Act. That's a big way of saying the act that funds the State Department moved through the House floor. That's another one of our appropriations bills. Just talking about appropriations for a minute, we've made a lot of progress in the House. All 12 of the bills that fund the day-to-day operation of the government are now out of committee. And this one was the third that we have now passed across the House floor. Obviously, we need to see what's going to happen in the United States Senate. And that's really where the problem is right now. I'm not casting aspersions on anybody, but they haven't moved any of their bills. The Republicans and Democrats in the Senate are at loggerheads. And so they haven't agreed upon a top line number. They haven't had any bills out of committee. And that worries us. So we're looking ahead. Funding for the government runs out on September 30th is the end of the fiscal year. And one of the things we're considering doing, and I'm actually going to be going to a conference on this at Camp David with the top White House political team and other major officials from the administration. The director of the Office of Management and Budget will be there. How do we move forward funding the government and making sure, honestly, there's not a shutdown at the end of September? Toward that end, one of the ideas we'll be talking about, I'm actually very supportive of, is doing what's called a CR, continuing resolution. That doesn't change anything. It just keeps everything just like it is past September 30th. We would continue to fund the government. We'd probably run it through about the end of November, sometime just after Thanksgiving, certainly not into next year. The idea being the election will occur. Nothing's going to happen definitively until the election gets sorted out. But the government would stay funded, and then we'd come back after the election, see if we'd come to a deal when people know who's controlling the House next year, who's controlling the Senate. The big hang up in the Senate, quite frankly, is one of the most contested United States Senate seats is the seat held by my counterpart in the Senate, the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Susan Collins, fellow Republican, terrific person, great legislator, but it's one of the most hotly contested, maybe the most hotly contested seat in America. And it's clear to me, at least, the Democrats aren't going to work with her until the election's over. I mean, they're either going to beat her or she's going to win. But they don't want to give her something that looks like a victory beforehand. Now, that's really unfortunate because Susan is considered one of the most moderate, reasonable people in the United States Senate. She's good at cutting deals. Like me, she just wants to make sure the government's funded. We'd like to provide certainty for that ourselves. Obviously, we're a federal heavy district. We've got Fort Sill, we've got Tinker Air Force Base, we've got the National Weather Center, we have Kerr Water Labs and Ada. So we have a lot of federal facilities and frankly a lot of contractors, Boeing, Raytheon, Pratt Whitney, Northrop Grumman. All these employ hundreds to thousands of people in Oklahoma. They need to know that their normal contracting is going to go on, their bills are going to get paid, so that the people that work there, jobs are secure. Again, a CR would do that for get us at least past the election and hopefully into a period where we're bargaining with one another and we pass these bills on a bipartisan basis. But again, I don't think the Democrats in the Senate, Chuck Schumer in particular, it seems to be very personal with him. They don't want Susan Collins to win. I mean, I get it. They want a Democratic seat. But they're holding up progress for the American people by not coming to an agreement and letting us just pass the regular funding bills that make sure our federal employees and those that depend on services or contracts from the federal government have some certainty in their life as they plan ahead. So that's what we're working on. Again, we've done our part so far in the House. We actually are prepared to sit down at any point. Once the bills are out of committee, we can start negotiating with our friends in the Senate, but they have to have their bills done too. And then we look at their bill and our bill, we compromise to the same bill, pass them both, send them on to the President of the United States. So the House is doing its part. The Senate, quite frankly, is at loggerheads, not because we don't have a majority in the Senate, we do, but largely because of the filibuster. You got to get to 60. So we only have 53 Republicans. And given that, if the Democrats aren't willing to come to an agreement, you can't get anything done. And right now, they're not willing to come to agreement. As a matter of fact, Senate Democrats, if you'll remember, shut the government down last year, longest shutdown in American history. And then we had a partial shutdown of funding for the Department of Homeland Security this year. And that was the longest partial shutdown in American history until we were able to work our way around it, use a tool called reconciliation. You'll hear more about that. It allows us to pass things through the Senate without the filibuster. There's work going on that as well. There's a bill that probably will emerge next week. You can't say for certain, that would have increased funding for the American military to offset the cost of the Iranian military conflict and allow us to purchase ahead of time more munitions at a more reasonable price. There'd be some aid for American farmers in that, and probably elements of the so-called Save America Act, which is largely about making sure people, when they register to vote, have voter ID of some sort. We have that in Oklahoma. You know, are required to show identification to vote. 20-odd states have that, I think 26 or 28, but not every state does, and that's a matter of a great contention. So we're trying to federalize that through the system and not force states to do it, but provide money to encourage them to do it. So this should be a pretty big bill, be around a $95 billion bill. Most of it, again, going to the American military. That's usually a good thing for Oklahoma. So we're working on that, but it'll be a big fight either between now and the end of this month, end of July, or in September, whenever they get it out and moving, but it will be out and moving. So again, Congress moving along pretty well. Let me end up, we also got filed this week, and I think we'll be able to move this, a piece of a congressional resolution recognizing the excellence of the University of Oklahoma baseball team, college baseball team, which of course made us all pretty happy by winning the College World Series this summer. That was a big deal. I know a lot of us had a lot of hope for our OU women who so routinely win the championship. They didn't quite make it to the championship round in Oklahoma City. I bet you they do next year. And then we hope that, well, the Thunder's going to repeat in the NBA, and they did really well, but that didn't quite happen for us. I don't think anybody believed this baseball team would be able to do what they did. It's an extraordinary accomplishment if you follow college sports at all, because they were in the lower half of the SEC. Nobody thought they were going to get to the World Series, let alone they would win the World Series. You have three freshman pitchers, their leading home run hitter, who's their catcher, didn't hit any home runs the first 18 games or so, 17 or so of the season. Then he got 18 home runs in like the next 18 games or so. So they were kind of a miracle performer. You know, they were the Cinderella team. They were the only unranked team at the College World Series, and the first one to be unranked to win the whole thing in many, many years. But those young guys were exciting to watch, and just happened to pull it off at just the right time. They got hot. I think they won 9 of the last 10 or 11 games of the season to storm right through to the championship. So we think that's worthy of congressional recognition, and I think even the people from the states who had teams that they defeated also appreciate. I've had a lot of, boy, I don't know how you guys did that. A lot of congratulations from, you know, there's always great baseball teams in Texas and Georgia and Alabama. SEC is a great baseball conference, and so a lot of those members were like, boy, I watched your Sooners. I didn't know they were that good. And I'd say, well, we didn't know they were that good either, but when it counted, they were. And so it's not always the best team. It's the team that plays best when it's required, and those young men did. It's something they're going to remember their whole lives. It's one of the great accomplishments in OU athletic history, so we want to commemorate that with a congressional resolution that recognizes them for what they did. It's pretty extraordinary thing. Good thing for the University of Oklahoma. good thing for the state of Oklahoma when any of our teams are competing at the highest level and being successful. So that's it this week. We'll look forward to visiting with you next week. Things are changing and moving very rapidly, so we hope we will nail down funding that will ensure no government shutdown in late September. And then again, we're going to keep moving bills. We're going to be ready to negotiate with the Senate whenever it can unsnarl itself. And again, I want to make very clear that's not the fault of our two senators in any way, shape, or form. This is really Democrats who, again, in the Senate have twice shut down the government. Democrats in the House actually worked with us to get the final funding bill done. I'm very appreciative of that, very appreciative of my counterpart, Democrat Rosa DeLauro. We don't always agree. We quite often disagree. We're from different parties, but we usually can figure out how to get a compromise that keeps things moving. And she was very helpful in getting that done. We'd had another government shutdown earlier. So again, I look forward to negotiating with her, but our Senate colleagues are not in a position right now where they can sit down and negotiate. They're too consumed with partisan warfare between the two sides. So again, we'll let them sort that out, but we will be ready to go. We will have our products passed out of committee. That's done. We'll have a lot of them passed across the floor. We're making good progress there, and we'll be ready to sit down and negotiate with the Senate, hopefully come to a deal. The president, of course, is part of that negotiation. He's got to sign these bills. And as I remind my Democratic friends, because they quite often like to shut the president out, I said, well, that would make a lot of sense when he has to sign it and he can sustain any veto he cares to cast. So that's why I'm headed out to Camp David, sit down with the president's top legislative team and his appropriations team, if you will. And let's talk through what's possible, what we can do working together, what kind of packages we can fashion that might attract Democratic support, or at the minimum can avoid a government shutdown in a matter of 2 months. And nobody wants that. It's not good for the country. It's certainly not good for Oklahoma. So that's number one job between now and 30th is keep the appropriations bills moving and find a way to avoid a government shutdown in late September. With that, I look forward to visiting with you next week. I hope you're having a great summer. Your summer's probably not as great as the OU baseball team's summer was, but I hope you're doing well. So good luck to you. God bless your families. Look forward to visiting with you next week.